intellectual property as a tool for, at the same time, guaranteeing the creators a possibility of remuneration for what they create, for what they invent, for what they do, but at the same time guaranteeing to the public the right to access those creations, those inventions, those innovative forms of assembling ideas, of assembling. Because creation is that. Creation is not something that comes to me from the blue, out of the blue, all of a sudden that God gives me, No, creation is an accumulation. It's an increasing process, that goes, it's like brick over brick over brick. I give a brick with one idea, somebody comes later and gives another brick. So the house, the building is a construction. It's always a collective construction. There is nothing like, intellectual property could never neglect that, sense. To transform intellectual property in something that, that is similar to owing, possessing something like this. It's different. This is a physical thing. If I have one of those things here and I give it to João, I start to miss it. I give it up. It's his. With an idea, with a sound, it's different. If I give João I share with him one of my ideas, he will have that idea, but I will keep my idea. So the intellectual works, the intellectual creation, it's always like that. It's always something that I do, that you do over there, and somebody else does over there. Like, let us take, for instance, the 7 notes created by Pythagoras. I mean, we've been doing music with that, with those 7 notes, for centuries, for millenniums now, for thousands of years now. And they are the same 7 notes that were. And when Pythagoras created that, he was not concerned about who was going to explode that, who was going to make money, to have him to make that an individual property or whatever. That was done for the sake of creation, for the sake of spiritual elevation, for the sake of of religious, spiritual compromise with life and with being here. So this is the struggle today, to get intellectual property, the intellectual property concept back to what was initially conceived for, guaranteeing at the same time the possibility of living for the creators through what they create, but at the same time guaranteeing to the public, to the common society, the right to access that. Because innovation, scientific progression, it all depends on that, on the possibility of the open source being kept open to everybody. So that, like, if somebody comes here and says, no, now the 7 notes are my property, and you're not allowed to use them anymore to make music. So we start being, it starts the possibility, we block the possibility of keep making music. So this is what, I mean, this kind of, how can I say, this exaggeration of the power that the corporations have, to detain, to retain property for what is created in the scientific domain, in the artistic domain, and so forth, is a menace. it put at risk the future of creativity and invention and inventiveness. So that's why we are here, to defend that, to defend this common concept of intellectual creation and guarantee that we have both the creators using the property, the property of what they do for their living, but at the same time guaranteeing the public the access to what is done, so that we can continue to have, the accumulation that defines creativity. Creativity, it's always incremental. It's something that we do, somebody else that comes later does again, and redo, remixing. It's the fundamental idea that's behind intellectual creation, and that has to be guaranteed, and that's why we are here, and that's why the Creative Commons institution is there. The Electronic Frontier Foundation is there. I mean, the departments in the Harvard University and then the foundations are there to guarantee, and so many people all over the world, struggling for this, restoration, so to speak, of the real concept of intellectual property. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to add to that the idea of intellectual property, as Gil put it, when it was initially created, was to protect the artist, but also to protect the common, and it got completely changed around, where it just basically started serving corporations. So now we have these movements like Creative Commons, and we have open source software, like Linux or Wikipedia is open source, and it's a very interesting model because it allows people to cooperate instead of compete. So when you're working with software like Red Hat or Linux and any of those applications that are open source, you allow people throughout the world, many researchers, to work together to develop a better tool. Now, the Brazilian government had an initiative now during Lula where all government's computers operating system was changed from Microsoft to Linux. Microsoft tried to sue the Brazilian government for that. It was like, listen, we're going open source, and they lost the suit. The Brazilian government won, and it's great. And that model that is used in music, that is used in software, we argue in the film that model needs to expand into other areas. So one day we can have open source agriculture, or open source, an open source economy. Right now we have one single type of currency, which is a fiat currency, which is essentially a debt type of currency. So again, if you bring these ideas of open source through several areas of society, I think it can be extremely beneficial.